Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. Madam President, before I make my contribution regarding this bill, I beg your leave to express condolences to a very special family and associate and gentleman. When I woke up this morning, I got a message that a teacher, colleague of mine, passed away suddenly. We had some history, attended school together and so on. He was a member of the teaching staff of the Beaufort Comprehensive Campus B, formerly Campus B, now Larry Schuss, Mr. Christopher Mooney, a young man in the prime of his life, succumbed this morning. It's significant for me to mention because of his tremendous contribution in several areas of life, in the church, in the community, in music, as well as English. And I know that his family, the Mooney family, and the staff of the Beaufort Comprehensive, as well as the Pero Combined School where his wife works, and many of us in the South who have interacted with him are suffering a great loss. So I express condolences to his family and hope that in these difficult times they can see through this tragedy. I also join the rest of us in expressing condolences to our colleague, Minister Fede, on the passing of his dad, and do wish that he too can go through and pull through this. I want to congratulate, along with our other colleagues, the Special Olympians. As an educator, Madam President, I appreciate the significance of achievements of people who are considered differently abled, who have disabilities, or who have special needs. And we sometimes do not recognize the amount of effort and sacrifice that has to be made, both by persons who work with them and they themselves, to achieve the things that they do achieve. I'm hoping that as a government, as a people, we continue to pay homage and continue to recognize in a much bigger way the achievements of such persons with special needs, not only Olympians, but in other areas of life. And so I join all of us in congratulating all of our Special Olympians for making us proud and for their tremendous achievement on behalf of our country. To the bill, Madam President, we know that when we come to this honorable house, it is a place where we pass legislation, we amend legislation, and it is a place where whatever decisions we make regarding passing or amending legislation is intended to improve situations within whatever department that the legislation is supposed to take care of, and in some cases fix problems that may have occurred, maybe because of lack of foresight or because of the changes in time. As we would know, Madam President, there are times when in a certain era, there are certain laws and certain behaviors that appear to be okay, but in a different time, they become, obsolete, or they do not apply, or in wisdom or in hindsight, we have to go back and fix them. So I welcome amending legislation. But when we do that, we have to be very mindful of the possible implications of those amendments and those changes. I will not focus too much, Madam President, on the specifics of the City Council legislation, but since this relates to the constituency councils, I just wanted to highlight a few areas that I think we need to be mindful of as we seek to pass this piece of legislation. Madam President, we know that there are some experiences in the past that we should have learned from, and going forward, when we seek to legislate, especially legislate activities of constituency councils like the CCC and other constituency councils around the country, that we must be mindful of. I want to suggest something that I have always said, even when the idea of local government first came in, that the persons who are going to serve on constituency council boards and whatever you call it, that these individuals, I believe, is my opinion, and I've felt that way before, and I still feel that way, that successive governments need to take heed of the process that is used to appoint those persons. I believe that the appointment by hand-picking persons may not necessarily be the best approach. And I really strongly advocate for local government elections. I think it's one of the ways that we can avoid finding ourselves having to go and change legislation because we want to do certain things. I believe also, Madam President, that we should take heed of the actions of previous councils and be careful that we are not empowering or legislating things that can cause members or employees of the constituency councils to engage in activities that are wrong, but or that are not, let us say, not wise, but seem to be legislated. I was privy to just yesterday observing a certain news item about the actions of a city police officer on social media. It was very unfortunate, and I don't think you can say that the city council is responsible for his behavior or would have approved of it. However, I believe that when we see that kind of, I'm not saying it's okay. I want to be precise and stand corrected. But let me refer to the incident involving persons who were associated or who could have seen in the video the presence of the city police. And I think it would be a good thing to kind of distinguish and make sure that it is clear that this is not the actions of the city police. But when we see those kinds of things, and I'm sure that as I speak, there are lots of St. Lucians who are associating with that. And so we must make sure that these kinds of things, when we pass legislation or when we empower our officers or employees of constituency councils, that we don't give the impression that we are giving them more power or more authority than they should have. Madam President, I believe that the employees themselves, not just the person serving on the councils, but people who work in constituency councils and in the city council, they need to be able to, when we give them additional power or we give them additional latitude, we also have to have legislation or measures that can protect them. Because every time you give someone a responsibility, there's always the possibility of liability. And so we should also make sure that the legislation has clauses that can protect the persons who are given the responsibility to carry out those actions. I heard the minister mention power of arrest. That's a very sensitive thing, because there are times when arrests are necessary. And law enforcement, I am a law-abiding citizen, and I believe that there are times you need to, people, even citizens, engage in arrest, citizens arrest. But I believe when you confer power, the ability upon someone to be able to effect an arrest, you must ensure, and I did hear the minister mention training of the port police. Very much so. If people are going to be involved in arresting other people, they need to have a certain amount of training. And I'm saying that if the city police is going to be given the power of arrest, and I heard also in some of the clauses mention of charging and so on, they need to be trained, and I think the minister, having been a trained police officer, would appreciate the importance of the proper training. Trained very well so that they are aware of what they're doing and they understand the implications of their actions. So while we don't want to limit and to suffocate or to stifle the actions of the employees of the city council, we don't want to make the city police feel that they are powerless, no. But we want them to know, or to know that the actions, first of all, they are protected by the law, and that they are properly trained to undertake some of those actions. Because I am sure that the police training school would have done a certain amount of work with the officers, the other police officers, the regular ones, so that when they are taking up their responsibility, they are guided by certain legislation and certain actions. But when it comes to the city police, I am not certain that the training that they receive currently is adequate. for some of the additional responsibilities that they are going to be given and the additional authority that this bill seems to be affording them. So, Madam President, for me, it is just saying that we should just act cautiously, because whenever you legislate things, there are always implications, and you do not want the persons who are empowered to carry out that action, or those upon which the action will be taken, find themselves in any way disadvantaged, liable, or unfortunate victims of what we could call victims of circumstance. So I wanted to just mention those on a point of caution, and I hope that it is taken in good faith, and going forward, that any additional amendments to this type of legislation will take into account some of what I have suggested. Thank you, Madam President.